Hey, Falcons NFL fans, welcome to another episode of NFL Jocks and Pigskins with Tom Pollen, Chris Smitherman behind the scenes producing the show. I'm Dave Holcomb. Got another exciting show for you today. Today's theme, how young the Atlanta Falcons are. A lot of lists popping up. We're at full offseason mode at this point.
Yes.
With the draft is done, the schedule has come out. We're now waiting basically for training camp to happen. Although, we've got some mini camps, rookie camps and stuff like that happening. But full offseason mode, you get these lists and, bold predictions for the upcoming season. And the Falcons have quite a few players that are being featured on lists of, top players under 25, top rookies to watch. And that kind of ties in with maybe the most breaking news we have this week. Arthur Smith talking about the team not wanting to tank this year. We'll address that and what we thought of Arthur Smith's comments there. But I think Smith really needs to focus on, the youth of this team and emphasize how great they could, the potential that they do have, because that seems to be what the focus is on these offseason lists. And that's where our focus will be today.
Yeah. Well, what Smith is doing is basically he knows this is not going to be a great season. He knows it's going to be rough. And he wants to get that tanking or not tanking out of the way early. He doesn't want that tanking conversation to be happening during the season when things are a little bit rough. Things are looking a little rough for the Falcons. But, he's getting out ahead of it, and which is fine. I mean, I like the fact that, he's willing to come out and say, hey, it's you got, as an organization, you have to get into the habit of winning. So, this tanking just, it leaves a bad taste in everybody's mouth, leaves a bad taste in the players' mouths, and you're never going to get ahead that way anyway. So, Smith is just saying, we want to have a winning organization.
Sure, yeah, and we'll get more into Arthur Smith's comments later in the show. Today's episode brought to you by Prize Picks. One of the best ways to support us, download the Prize Picks app in your app store. Use that promo code ASU when you sign up. That is our promo code, Atlanta Sports Unlimited. And with that promo code, you get a 100% match on your first deposit up to $100. And that it's a great way of supporting us, sending us something back our way as well. And if you love our show or love the channel, also feel free to subscribe on YouTube to Atlanta Sports Unlimited. Like this video, like us on Facebook, and reach out to us also on Twitter. We love interacting with you guys at TJ Pollen, at DM Holcomb.
Absolutely. It's always great to talk to everybody on Twitter. Football doesn't start and end on Saturday for either of us. So that's always, it's just the way it is anymore. It's 24/7, 365. It's NFL.
Absolutely. Yeah, totally. We got some comments already coming in, and we'd love to hear more from you guys. Let's see. MJ23 Cliff says that he's catching us live for a change. That's great. Thanks for joining us this Saturday morning.
Good to see you, yeah.
In Atlanta. And Pantera actually has a question off the bat, and I double-checked here because he brought up a good point, Chris Lindstrom not being included in the top 25 under 25 lists from Pro Football Focus, which we're going to chat about today. And, if I understand the rules correctly, Chris Lindstrom is eligible for that list because Chris Lindstrom does not turn 26 until next February. So the rules were that you had to be 25 or younger on opening day in September this fall, and Lindstrom will be 25. So Lindstrom does not make the list, not because he's eligible, didn't make the list because we got the guy making the list didn't find him worthy of being in the top 25, under 25 or younger, I should say.
Yeah, it's tougher for guards, though. Tougher for guards to stand out in that way. But, Lindstrom's been solid for the Falcons since he came in. You got to like the effort he's given, the production he's given. at least he's been a positive for this team over the past few years. You wish McGarry could have come out with the same kind of, production, same kind of positive vibe that Lindstrom gave. But, at least they did get one good offensive lineman out of
that draft.
Yeah, out of that draft a couple of years ago. So
yeah. To your point, there are no guards on that list on the top 25 and younger list from Pro Football Focus.
Yeah.
So there's 3 offensive linemen, 2 tackles, and a center, but no guards.
Yeah, it's, as I say, it's tough as a guard. There are no counting stats as a guard, and you're only kind of looked at if you've collapsed quite a bit. You've had some bad matchups against nose tackles, and then the attention is all negative. So it's hard to look strong as a guard unless you've got unless you're a real road grader of a running game. So, which the Falcons don't have. Right. So it's not a bad thing that Lindstrom didn't get recognized. It's kind of par for the course for that position.
Right. That's what I'm saying. I agree with you that Lindstrom is a very good young guard. Maybe was snubbed on the list, but if you look at the list overall, it's going to be hard for guards to make it. And offensive linemen in general, only 3 out of 25 of the spots went to offensive linemen. But let's talk about the Falcons that were on the list. A.J. Terrell making the top 10.
Yeah.
Number 9 overall. And then Kyle Pitts cracking the list as well at number 24.
Yeah, well, Terrell, we've kind of known this over the past couple of years. Terrell's been a quality cornerback. A guy that the Falcons, have finally found in the secondary that they can count on, that can be a cover corner. It didn't quite work out teaming him with Oliver, but Oliver has made his niche as a nickel corner. But we've known Terrell has been good for a couple of years now and has been quality, and it's nice to see him get the national attention that he deserves.
Yeah, in the article, which I encourage everybody to check out if you are a subscriber to PFF, it's written by Trevor Sikkema. Not exactly sure how to pronounce his name, but
well, this one's not behind their firewall, so you can go ahead and read it.
There you go. Okay. Mm-hmm. So anybody can read it. He writes that Terrell allowed 29 catches for 200 yards the entire season last year and surrendered a league low 47.5 passer rating in coverage. So those are the PFF analytics at work there. Yeah. And Terrell, which we've talked about Pro Football Focus before, and this could have been another reason why Lindstrom isn't on it. Maybe Lindstrom looks better in our eyes than maybe against the Pro Football Focus grades. But these rankings are based on the Pro Football Focus grades, and Terrell ranks very well with those PFF grades.
Yeah, and as I say, I think it's about time, because I think Terrell a couple of years ago established himself as one of the top corners in the league. Or potential to be one of the top corners in the league. He's really made that now. And seeing him with Casey Hayward this following season coming up, it's going to be fun seeing this Falcons secondary flying around. It's amazing that Terrell does this well, considering how bad the Falcons pass rush has been.
That's really true. Yeah,
it really is, because that means he has to stick with his receiver a lot longer than other cornerbacks. And that's a rough thing. It's rough to perform when you don't have that pass rush. It's tough to be an effective cornerback when you don't have that pass rush. So the fact that he's getting recognized as one of the top corners in the league by PFF, it really means something, considering the defense he's been playing on the last couple of years.
Terrell ranked a top cornerback on the PFF 25 and under list as well. So, I mean, you're talking about him being a top cornerback. I would be curious see where he's ranked on PFF's overall cornerback list, because I think he'd be in the top 5 at this point.
I would say he'd have to be, yeah.
Yeah, number 1, 25 and younger, and there's only 2 other cornerbacks on that list, and a guy that everybody loved coming out of college, was a rookie in 2021. Trevon Diggs for the Dallas Cowboys. He was a home run hitter. It seems like he was either giving up a long touchdown or he was making an interception. So I guess that probably lowers his analytics or whatever, the passes he did give up. Whereas, Terrell doesn't have the interceptions, but he's got the shutdown ability. But, Diggs is, because he plays for the Cowboys, because he gets those interceptions, he's that kind of the big name young cornerback. And Terrell significantly ranked ahead of Trevon Diggs on that list.
But that's the thing. Trevon Diggs will get burned as he takes so many chances.
Yeah.
That he gets burned as much as he'll make a big play.
Right.
And that's the problem with Trevon Diggs. I mean, I like him as a cornerback. I think he's got to rein his game in a little bit. But that you're not going to get the interceptions that way. You don't get the notoriety that way.
Yeah. Right.
That's the thing. Terrell may not get the notoriety around the league, partially because, played for a team that basically didn't compete for the playoffs or barely competed for the playoffs last season. But he just does his job. He stays in between him and the quarterback. He stays stuck to his wide receiver. He's very sticky in coverage. And that's all you can ask for out of a cornerback. I'm not worried about how many interceptions he gets. Tell me how many passes defended, how many times that quarterbacks have completed big plays against him. And according to PFF, quarterbacks don't complete big plays against him.
Right. Yeah. I hope this doesn't offend anybody. I don't think it will. It's kind of just a fact that, it not only was it a playoff team and Diggs playing for a playoff team and Terrell not, I think it's a Dallas Cowboy effect.
Yes, that's true too.
Have just a huge following. They're been known as America's team for a long time. They get a lot of media coverage.
They sure do.
A ton of media coverage, and the Falcons don't on a national scale. They just don't. And we can debate why or say that Atlanta should be a bigger focus across the country. But I think we can all agree, even Falcons fans, that attention just isn't there for the Falcons for whatever reason. And Diggs gets that attention because of the team he plays for.
Yeah, exactly. Dallas Cowboys have always gotten attention. Even when they've been bad, they get national attention.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. It really almost doesn't have anything to do with the Cowboys being good. It's the Cowboys.
It's just the Cowboys. It's the fact that they are the Dallas Cowboys. And it's kind of been that way since the early 70s or late 60s when they started really challenging for NFL championships. Tom Landry had that team built. That team was at the top of the league. And they kind of hyped themselves as America's team. They created a lot of hype that has continued to carry forward. And it's amazing, PR firms can take a lesson from what the Dallas Cowboys have done to be able to keep their name at the top of the NFL for so long.
Sure. Yeah. And they have a huge fan base too. That maybe it's because they were good and they were good in the 70s and it's been passed down to the next generation. I think that's true with like the Steelers, but I don't know if it's because of the state of Texas. There were so many people that only one team there for, I guess the Oilers were there for a while, but only one.
But never reached never reached that level of passion that Cowboys fans have always had. The Oilers were good, but never quite cracked that national audience the way the Cowboys did.
Right. But despite, the attention that the Cowboys get, that doesn't play a factor in PFF's rankings, which is a good thing. Diggs on the list, but barely at number 25. And again, Terrell in the top 10.
Terrell in top 10.
Let's talk about Pitts because, Pitts is 22, 23. He has a chance. He's going to be on this list for like 2 or 3 years. And he has a chance to be, I would think if he look, I mean, I guess the quarterback situation in Atlanta is going to impact what he can do. But
yeah,
I think a lot of people, the conversation this offseason with Pitts is that he's going to become one of the best tight ends in the league this year. And even if he falls a little short of that, I mean, he's going to be one of the best players under 25 by the end of, I was going to say the end of December, but the season runs in the middle of January now.
Yeah.
By the middle of January.
Yeah, remember, we got, that season keeps getting longer. Pretty soon
Right.
they'll be playing the Super Bowl on opening, baseball's opening day. They'll be going up against the Super Bowl. So, keep that in mind. It's coming. It's coming. Like they're going to be playing the World Series on Thanksgiving. So keep looking for it. Oh, it's amazing how these seasons stretch every single season. But, Pitts has the right coach to be the top, be a top tight end, because he has a coach who loves to use the tight end position in the passing game. So, he's well set up for being a top-rated tight end in the league for quite a while. He's going to get the attention. He's got a coach who loves that position.
Absolutely. And already a 1,000-yard season as a rookie. I mean, came close to the rookie tight end record. He's 21. I wanted to double check his age. So he's going to be on this list.
By the way, who holds the rookie tight end record? Was that somebody?
He played for the Dallas Cowboys at one point.
Well, he played, at one point, but we don't count that.
And he's from Pittsburgh. So
yes, he's from Pittsburgh.
He played Pitt. Played for Pitt.
And for those of you who aren't familiar with your NFL history, we are talking about Mike Ditka, the Bears. So,
Pantera seems to be a Roger Staubach fan.
Yeah. Well, it's easy to be a Roger Staubach fan. The guy was a hell of a quarterback.
Yeah.
For good reason. He made that team go. So, he's the guy that Tom Landry decided would be the correct quarterback to reintroduce the shotgun formation into the NFL. The shotgun had been out of the NFL for about 15 years, and Landry decided Staubach was the guy who would be the man who could run that formation. And I'll give you a history of it. One of these weeks, we're going to give you a history of the shotgun formation, because it's a fascinating history. It really is. Look up the name Red Hickey. He was a coach for the San Francisco 49ers in the mid-1950s, and you'll find some good stuff there about what Hickey did as far as innovation and his style of coaching.
Leave it to Tom. We're talking about the players 25 and younger, and he's bringing up, history from the 1950s.
I'm telling you, hey, it's always there. Oh, man.
So I wanted to ask you to wrap up our top 25 players, 25 and younger, the list from Pro Football Focus. Again, encourage you guys to check out that list at Pro Football PFF.
As I say, it's not behind their paywall, so you can find it. So yeah, take a look at it. PFF, as I say, sometimes their rankings really bother me, because sometimes I really don't think they're watching the same game that I'm watching or that other fans are watching. But overall, they try to be very consistent in their rankings. I know what goes into their ranking systems, what they try to look for in ranking each position. It's a very thorough system. The problem is you're always at the mercy of the person doing the rankings. So that can always be a problem if you don't have the right people doing a ranking for a specific game. You might be off a little bit. But they do try to really nail in the best thing about each position, not just, your feature positions, but about line play and and what a team is intending to do or trying to do. So, you get the good and the bad with Pro Football Focus. That's all I have to say.
So with this list, did anything jump out at you as, wow, I was expecting that player to be higher, or that player is ranked too high, or maybe a player on the list that shouldn't be on the list, or a player that's not on the list that should be, other than maybe Lindstrom?
Well, considering the year he had last year, I'm surprised Chase Young was on the list, actually, because he really fell off from his rookie season. Terrible rookie season. So I was a little surprised to see him there. Trevor Lawrence is made the list based on reputation more than production, but we all know what Trevor Lawrence had to deal with last year when you had that goofball that goofball coach that he had to deal with last year. I'm not even going to mention his name. Boy, we got college coaches are really just tearing into each other lately too. So
yeah, and being in Atlanta, that I was wondering if maybe our audience wanted to briefly touch on that. This is SEC country, so
yeah.
Any strong opinions on Jimbo or Nick, send them our way. I'd love to just hear not even respond to you. I just love to hear the reaction from anybody who has.
So would I. Yeah.
To it.
Larry Orange says only 2 quarterbacks out of the 25. That's interesting. Yes, because you would think you would see more quarterbacks in that 25, but a lot of the quarterbacks in the AFC, especially the AFC now, are kind of established. I mean, I would be interested to look at the ages of the starting quarterbacks in the AFC. I don't know how that runs, but Justin Herbert made it justifiably, but it'd be interesting to see because 2 young quarterbacks, but I mean, I think a lot of teams have their established quarterbacks, so be interesting to see. I might look that up after the show, see how many under 25 and under quarterbacks we really do have out there that are making a distance for their teams. Another guy who I don't think ever gets enough attention, really should, Quinn Williams of the New York Jets, is on that list. And I really like the guy. And I think it's terrible that he plays for a Jets team that has just been so awful the last few years. But Quinn Williams is a hell of a player, hell of an inside defensive lineman. And really nice to see him on that list. So, that's kind of my comment on the whole thing.
I 100% agree with you with the Trevor Lawrence thing. I don't know if it's reputation. I don't know why he's on the list, to be honest. I don't think he deserved a spot.
Again, he's on the list based on, his reputation coming out of college and the fact that everybody feels like his rookie season was wasted last year.
Well, it was. I think that is accurate, but based on how he played, you cannot rank him as one of the top 25 players under 25 or 25.
No, you can't.
You really you can't.
Based on production, you cannot.
Right. And that's how I feel Pro Football Focus works. It's not supposed to be potential. It's not an opinion. It's supposed to be like what their analytics stats say. And I can't fathom how their analytics say Trevor Lawrence is one of the best.
Now, this is one that kind of slipped past their analytics and as I say, went more on reputation, because there's no analytics that can tell you that Trevor Lawrence was one of the top 25 under 25, going into next season. It's just not there. I expect better things out of Trevor Lawrence, but I don't.
Sure.
He's not there, and he should not have been on this list.
So, to your point about the ages of the other young quarterbacks, a lot of them are 26. Josh Allen is 26. Actually, Josh Allen's birthday is today. He turns 26.
Yes, he is. Right. That's true.
Patrick Mahomes is 26.
Right.
One guy that I would have to, I don't know, I'm going to have to reach out to Trevor and figure out what Joe Burrow is not doing on the list. Joe Burrow is 25. He doesn't turn 26 until December.
Yeah, that's a really good
so,
observation.
Yeah, and from what I understand, I'm rereading the intro here, and he says in his intro that Kyler Murray is not eligible because Murray is 25, but will be 26 before the season starts.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe that's his cutoff. His cutoff is when the season begins. So I don't know why Joe Burrow turning 26 in December would make him ineligible, and I can't understand why. No. Based on his production, Joe Burrow wouldn't be ahead of Trevor Lawrence.
Joe Burrow should be there ahead of Trevor Lawrence, unconditionally. There's no question about it. So, that's kind of where we are right now. So, yeah, again, you get a mixed bag when you get Pro Football Focus, but feel good about the fact that A.J. Terrell scored so high because A.J. Terrell does a lot more on the field that isn't flashy. He doesn't get a lot of attention for what he does, but he does it great. He is really good, a really good cover cornerback.
You know what? I have misread. I can explain why Joe Burrow is on the list. It is not 25 and younger. It is younger than 25. That is
okay.
So that would be why Chris Lindstrom isn't eligible,
right.
And maybe why he's not on it. Because Kyler Murray is 24. He turns 25 in August, and he clearly, Trevor clearly says that Murray is not eligible. So Burrow's not eligible either. Larry Orange is asking about Burrow. But Mac Jones is. That's another good one to bring up. Mac Jones.
I think Jones was consistent last year. Didn't blow me away last year. But I think he's developed into a solid quarterback. I don't know if he makes this list for me yet.
I would have him ahead of Trevor Lawrence, though.
Yes. Yeah, I would too.
Not saying that I think Mac Jones necessarily is going to have the better career than Lawrence, just based on right now. To me, this list is who are the best players under 25 right now, not with the most potential, not playing with the worst coach or best coach, just who, based on how they played last season and in their careers, where would you rank this player? And I would have Mac Jones ahead of Trevor Lawrence based on how they played as rookies.
I would say yes. Yeah, definitely. I would have to agree with you. You are right. So,
but you're right.
Reading it just as heading into the next season. Yeah, you are correct. I'll give you one there.
It's about time.
About time, right?
Yeah. But the moral of the story, it's great to see two Falcons players on that list coming back to the Atlanta Falcons, and one in the top 10. Yeah, I think that's fantastic. That A.J. Terrell is an up and coming young defender that could be, mentioned with Defensive Player of the Year. I think maybe could be his potential in the conversation for that award. So, and
going to be teaming with a top quarterback who never really gets the notoriety of a top corner. But Casey Hayward is a hell of a cornerback. And I think Terrell's going to learn a lot from him, and they're both going to help each other be better next year. That's going to be a hell of a secondary for the Falcons next year. If they could just find a little bit of pass rush somewhere. Just a little bit.
Yeah.
That's all it needs.
Right.
You're building something there that, it's not special yet, but you're building something there that has potential. If you can get some performance, out of the draft picks, last couple of years draft picks, if you can get a couple of them to step up, get the edge rusher from this last draft to step up, your second round edge rusher, you can really start doing something here as a defense. You might not be too far from Dean Pease' outstanding defense as you think.
Yeah, Mad Mike weighing in. Great to see you, Mad Mike. Absolutely. Yeah. Terrell, Darren Hall, Oliver. I'm excited about what's to come. Yeah, and that kind of leads us into our next conversation about Arthur Smith and what he had to say about the team trying to win in 2022. Don't worry, Cliff. I do want to come back to the Texas boosters versus Alabama boosters later in the show. We will get to that, I hope. But let's talk about Arthur Smith now, because I think his focus needs to be on.
Can I just say one thing? As far as Texas boosters and Alabama boosters, you got boosters that are throwing rocks at glass houses. You live in a glass house, both of you do, and you're throwing rocks. You shouldn't be doing that.
Well, that's what makes it so entertaining.
I know.
Not being involved at all.
Yes.
It's just right. Yeah. We're going to get to this. We're going to get to this, Tom.
Yeah.
But I want to talk about Arthur Smith here for a few minutes and relate it to, like what Matt Mike's saying about how excited he is about the secondary.
Yeah.
Well, I guess I'll read the quote here first. It's I'm going to plug another paid site that you have to subscribe to, but The Athletic and Jeff Schultz, the coverage that he does on the Atlanta Falcons is really fantastic. I would recommend. He does some breaks.
I think the Athletic does very good work around the NFL. Some fine writers, above average writers. So yeah, it's a place you want to be, if you can afford going behind the paywall.
Yeah, absolutely. You do have to pay for it, but I think it's higher quality than the free sites. And I would say, if you're a fan of more sports than just the NFL, I love their hockey coverage too. Specifically the Penguins beat writer is a fantastic guy and really does a great job of reporting on the Penguins. But so I would highly recommend Jeff Schultz and his work on the Falcons and Atlanta sports in general. So he had an interview with Arthur Smith this past week, and lots of other sites have aggregated what he had to say about tanking, not tanking. And this is like the crux of the interview. I think the most important part about tanking. Smith says it's the dumbest thing I've ever heard, that a team would try to not win football games. If you don't, there's going to be consequences. Okay, you're at the top of the draft. I got it. But you're in a very transactional phase of the National Football League right now. Trades in the draft, trades for quarterbacks. It's a different landscape than when Jimmy Johnson took over the Dallas Cowboys in 1989. It was pre-free agency, the famous Herschel Walker trade. They blew it up and went 1-15, and it was a long rebuild. That is not the same NFL as today. Back then, people would have given their firstborn before they gave up their picks, gave their picks away. People are still going off old narratives, and it's comical. Any good team knows how to rebuild every year.
Yeah, it's amazing how many teams actually do know how to rebuild every year. Teams like the Baltimore Ravens or the Patriots or never seem to enter that rebuilding era. They're always competitive. They're always at the top of their game. But with the Ravens, it's Ozzie Newsome and now Eric DeCastro. They just learned. They know how to use the draft better than any team in the NFL. And I'll place bets. I'll put my money on that they're the best. But I agree with Arthur Smith. You don't have to ride this team down to the bottom to get better. You don't need that top 5 pick for the next couple of years to get better. It is a league where you can turn it around if you can get the right players in the offseason, if you can control your salary cap. So that's kind of what they're looking at. This year is all about gaining control of the salary cap.
Well, that's the thing. You say that, yeah, you can rebuild if you do this, and this. Well, the number one thing is control the salary cap, and the Falcons haven't done that. So
that's Thomas Dimitrov's fault.
I'm not saying it's Arthur Smith's fault. I'm just saying that it's not 100% able. They're not 100% able to just rebuild on the fly because of the cards they've been handed.
Again, the Bears are in the same situation as the Falcons. Ryan Pace left this team in terrible shape as far as salary cap, as far as no draft picks, and a lack of quality players. But, you can get past that. Yeah, you might not rebuild this year. It might not be a one-year thing. But you could be amazed at how quick this thing can come back once they get the salary cap situation under control. And you notice that none of these teams that seem to be at the top of the league every year. Again, the Baltimore Ravens, the Patriots, and I know there are others slipping my mind, but the Packers, they never get in the salary cap hell.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
They don't do it. And that's one of the reasons why they are competitive every year, why you look at them and say, this could be a Super Bowl team, or this is going to be a playoff contender. And then once you get into the playoffs, you never know what happens. But these are teams that always seem to be at the top. And that's because they know how to handle their salary cap, know when they're overpaying for a player. And you're hoping that the Falcons are getting into that era too. Smith is right. You can build, and you don't have to tank to do it.
I see what you're saying. I'm completely against tanking. I don't want to sound like I'm advocating tanking. Of course, I don't like tanking, but I feel like that should be. Smith could just simply say that. He could just simply say, "Well, tanking's bad for the league. It's bad competition. I'm never going to not try and win." Instead of, again, it leaves a bad taste in my mouth when this ownership, not ownership group, but the front office for the Atlanta Falcons do not want to admit that they are rebuilding. And yes, it can happen quickly, like you're saying. You're absolutely right, Tom. But they are rebuilding.
Yes.
And it's because of the previous regime. It is not their fault that they were forced to rebuild. It's also Matt Ryan's age that they were forced to, I guess it was going for Deshaun Watson forced the Matt Ryan trade. Now they entered a draft where there was a weak quarterback class. They decided not to go quarterback at number 8, rightfully decided that. And now they're left with basically no quarterback for a year. So yeah, you are rebuilding, and those are the right choices, not to try and go for a veteran quarterback to quickly try and compete in 2022. But why not just admit that? Why not just make the focus about we're trying to get better every single day, give us some cliche answer about, improving a little bit every day, and you're not going to tank, that's fine, but not this, answer again, like last summer, that they're competing for something, that they're going to be competing in 2022 for a championship. I don't think it does them any favors to do that. And I don't understand the Cowboys analogy. Also, maybe you, Tom, or a listener can explain how Herschel Walker has to do with this.
Well, the fact that the Cowboys got so many draft picks out of the Herschel Walker trade, and they got all kinds of good draft picks out of the Herschel Walker trade because Minnesota basically went downhill after acquiring Walker.
Okay, so there's two things I would say to that.
So the Cowboys got a lot of quality draft choices that allowed them to rebuild almost immediately.
So wasn't it a good move?
Oh, it was a great move to trade Herschel Walker.
Right. So why is he seemingly saying that blowing up your team by trading away a veteran is a bad thing? Because it's tanking?
That part I don't get. I don't get it, because that was the best move the Cowboys made. And
that
they got about 6 to 8 draft picks that directly contributed to their championship years. So it was one of the best trades they ever made.
Yeah, it's one of the best trades from the Cowboys' perspective in NFL history.
Minnesota thought they were going to be going for it with Herschel Walker on their team. They fell apart. So yeah, I don't get that reference there that Arthur Smith is making.
I'll ask you this question: Do you agree with Arthur Smith that draft picks in 1989 were more valuable than they are now? Because that's what he said. That I'll read the quote again. People would have given their firstborn before they gave away their picks, which he contradicts himself, because clearly the Minnesota Vikings didn't feel that way. The Minnesota Vikings gave up their draft picks for Herschel Walker. But anyway, do you agree that draft picks are not as valued today as they were 30 years ago?
I don't know. I could tell you it was tougher to build back then because you didn't have free agency. You had to scout. You had to be right on top of what you were doing as far as picking. If you were going to trade picks, you had to get some equivalent value back. It was tough. Now, with free agency, you can do it differently. It's a little bit better to do, but I still think draft picks are a premium because back then, oh God, back then you needed your draft picks. I still think you need your draft picks. I still think they're important. I still think they're the basis for how you build a team, for how you keep your team young, for how you keep turning over talent and keeping your salary cap under control. If you can turn over talent, if you can keep these young guys coming into your program, that's how you keep your salary cap under control. Belichick has been known for trading guys who are at the top of their game, maybe trading them a couple of years early, but knowing that he's got players coming up behind them too. So that's kind of how you do it these days. Then you look back at the Redskins. Oh man. Back in the early 70s, they never met a draft pick that they couldn't trade. They right. Traded every draft pick. That's why they became known as the Overhill Gang.
Yeah. Right.
They were great at trading draft picks, but no, I think they're still valuable. I still think they're still very valuable, and so I don't know if I agree with what Arthur Smith is saying in that statement.
I guess I agree with his overall what he's saying. I feel like he uses the wrong points to get there, I guess is what I would say.
Well, his point is we're not looking at 2023, nor should you be.
Well, yeah, I agree with that. He shouldn't. Right. Yeah, it is about improving with these young players they have, because they do have young talent. They do.
Yes, they do.
There are reasons to be excited about watching the Falcons this season. I'm not saying it's doomsday, which I kind of thought it would be when they traded Matt Ryan. That is far from that. But
I tell you, if you give me the choice between watching the Falcons and watching the Panthers next season, I'm watching the Falcons.
Well, of course, yeah. I mean, Panthers are one of the bottom feeders of the league.
But I'm saying the Falcons aren't the bottom feeder.
Okay.
This is a team that has some talent.
Yes. Agreed. And his point about, I think this is a point he's trying to make about the NFL being a transactional league. And I guess this is kind of what he's saying about the draft picks getting traded and not as valuable today. I think that's what he's saying. Is they're being traded around a lot. Say the Falcons get the number 5 pick next year, and people are already talking about that being a quarterback next year. Well, you don't know who's picking in front of you. You don't know who might trade up ahead of you to take a quarterback. And that's basically what Arthur Smith is saying.
Yeah.
And a great example he could use, he probably doesn't want to use a current day example, but I will. The Miami Dolphins were, a lot of people were talking about them tanking, and we now have evidence that Stephen Ross wanted the team to tank, and Brian Flores didn't want to. But
tank for Tua.
Yeah, they were 0-8 in 2019, and then finished that season, I believe 5-11 was their final record. So they went 5-3 in the final 8 games, and ended up with the number 5 or 6 pick, whatever it was. They got Tua anyway.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we're talking about you can have a mock draft in May of 2022 for the draft that's 11 months from now, but you don't even know, even if we did a mock draft in September or October, you don't know who might get hurt or who.
There are some people who've done that. There are some people who put out mock drafts right after the draft.
Of course, and people read them. And I understand it's a business and that we're going to have those mock drafts really early. But from a coach's perspective, you don't tank because you don't know where that quarterback might fall. Tua was the number 1 pick going into the season, and people thought the Dolphins were tanking for him. Well, he ended up being the number 5 or 6 pick, and the Dolphins got him anyway without having to tank. So that is, I think, the best example of why tanking is not necessary and doesn't even help you.
Never helps. Again, it creates an environment of losing that you never want in your locker room.
Absolutely.
You never want your players to go into the season thinking that you're not out there, that your coaches aren't out there trying to put you in the best position to win, that they're trying to, keeping you off the field for this reason or that reason, when, you're in a situation maybe on the field where, your talents, this is what you do. This is what you do best. Being an extra cornerback and seeing the guy on this, sitting on the bench, and all of a sudden you're like, well, he's not putting in the guys we need in that certain situation. Why are we not putting our best players out there in that certain situation? And that you cannot do that. You cannot create that kind of doubt in a player's mind. You're going to destroy your team. You're going to destroy your team chemistry. Everybody wants to win. Absolutely. It may not always be able to do it, but everybody wants to win.
Right. And that's all I think Arthur Smith has to say, is that he wants to win, his team wants to win, and his team wants to get better. That's really the most important thing. Not that they necessarily win this year, it's that they get better week in and week out.
Right.
And that they're better this year, even if the record isn't better. I don't know if they're going to win 7 games again. But as long as they're getting better defensively, and maybe if Mariota plays the majority of this season, and that's the reason why they don't win 7 games, then, we talk about the improvements they can make with a new quarterback. But that's for after the season.
Well, that's an interesting point, Dave, you just brought up, and that might be a topic of conversation going forward, is what constitutes a better season for this year's Falcons than 2020, than the one they had last year with Matt Ryan at quarterback. And I'm not saying I'm glad to see Ryan gone. I still think you're a better team with Ryan, but
sure, of course.
After the mess they made out of the Deshaun Watson situation, that just wasn't going to happen. But
right, yeah.
What does constitute success for the 2022 Falcons? Not the same thing that the 2021 Falcons, because I think everybody was still looking playoffs.
Right. Yeah. I think there was a lot of hope, and this was sold to the fan base by Arthur Smith and Terry Fontenot, that they weren't rebuilding and that they could win on the fly. And I bought into it too, to be honest. And they did win 7 games. They won a lot of close games that they had to tough out. And I think it was, if I was a Falcons fan, I would have been proud of them winning some of those games, even though it was against the Lions. They still had to cut out that win, and they got that W the day after Christmas. That was an exciting home win. I guess maybe the only home win they had. But I still think, what was my overall point? Lost my train of thought.
Welcome to my world, Dave.
That I just don't think that they do themselves any favors by billing this as a team that can make the playoffs. Or maybe I'll take that back. That can win the Super Bowl. I'll say that are true contenders. With 7 playoff teams now, there's a team that goes 8-9, 9-8 that makes the playoffs, so they can compete for that spot for sure. I think if you got to be really bad, I think you're not going to compete for that spot. But overall, I think the goal is to just continue to get better, as opposed to thinking about wins and losses. I guess that's my overall point. So, Mad Mike commenting here again, tanking is for losers. I absolutely agree. I could not agree anymore. I was living in Philadelphia when the 76ers were tanking about 6-7 years ago. And I guess are the 76ers good now? I don't follow the NBA as you guys know. So I know they were the number 1 seed last year because Atlanta beat them in the playoffs. I guess the 76ers are not still in it, right? It's Boston, and who's the other team? Who's Boston playing?
I haven't followed the NBA much this year. I have had such a ridiculous time at work. I tell you, this has been a rough week. Been a rough 2 or 3 weeks at work. So I really haven't followed it as close as I would like. And it's unfortunate because I used to always I watch all four major sports, and now I find that I have to split my time between the four major sports because I don't have time for them all, like I used to.
We got some more comments here I want to get to. Wallace Smith weighing in here late. How you doing, Wallace? He says it's ridiculous to even think about a mock draft this early. We absolutely agree.
I agree.
But there's a lot of fans that like it. And, there are,
they write them for a reason.
That, and you got to fill up the space on the internet. So, and it's an infinite amount of space. So there's a lot of articles that
if people didn't read them, they wouldn't write them.
That too.
They write them for a reason.
And Pantera weighing in saying coaches can't ask players to throw a pick, let wide receiver miss tackle, this and that. But the way you tank is sitting out your star player when he could play. I still would argue against any type of tanking, any type of losing on purpose. That I think there's a difference. Maybe this should be my overall point. There is a difference between rebuilding and admitting that you're rebuilding than tanking. Tanking is legitimately losing on purpose.
Right.
The Falcons trading away Matt Ryan and then saying that we're heading for a rebuild season is not tanking.
No. That
is rebuilding and hoping to be better in the future. That is not losing on purpose.
That's saying we have to move forward. We need to grow this team again. We need to move forward from that era. That era is over, is basically what they're saying.
And if I have a criticism of Arthur Smith and Terry Fontenot, they seem to equate the two. They seem to equate the two of if we're rebuilding, then people think we're not winning or trying to win. And I think that's wrong. Anybody who says that you're not trying to win if you're rebuilding that's not right. That's just not right. And Larry Orange answers my question. He says, Boston is playing Miami. Thank you. I forgot about the Miami Heat. I think the Miami Heat was the 1 seed this year. I think. But
as I said, I just have not kept up with it.
Let's move to college football for the last few minutes.
All right, let's do that.
Which we don't talk a whole lot of college football. We mention Georgia occasionally when they're doing well, and obviously Georgia's done really well over the last couple of years, national champions. And I think it's so funny hearing Georgia fans' perspective in the Jimbo Fisher and Nick Saban thing, because I've heard a lot of, maybe it's just because I'm in Georgia, but I've heard a lot of chatter about Georgia having the bag man, having the paying their players illegally. And that's complete speculation. I have no confirmed report that is true. That's really fan blogs, probably blogs of enemy fans that say Georgia's doing that.
Sure.
But if there's any, that is, I guess, a popular narrative, I would say. And that's what makes this Jimbo Fisher, Nick Saban rivalry thing funny. Because if you're Georgia, you're kind of looking back and you're like, good, we're not involved in this controversy with paying players. But let's see. We've got he commented a while ago, but Cliff seems to like the NIL for leveling the playing field. And he added that Texas boosters greater than Alabama boosters. So I guess it levels the playing field in terms of it gives Texas schools an opportunity to catch up to Alabama paying players, because Texas is, believe it or not, Texas's football budget is even bigger than Alabama's.
Oh yeah, Texas
Much
football
bigger.
is king of Texas.
And even Texas A&M, which isn't really like a powerhouse football school. I was surprised when Jimbo Fisher left Florida State, a blue blood program for Texas A&M. Obviously, his contract of $10 million guaranteed a season, I think is what it was, played a role in that. But the amount of money they're able to put into the program played a part in that too. And I guess maybe he made the right choice. Florida State hasn't done anything since he left. But Texas schools, Texas A&M included, huge amount of money going into those football programs.
And always have. That's the thing. These schools have always had booster money flowing in. They expect booster money to be flowing in to keep their facilities at the top of the game. And let's face it, to offer players incentives to come to their programs and be part of their programs. So it's ridiculous. They've all played the same game for years.
Yeah.
It's just funny to see this coming out now. Somebody complaining about money in college football when this has been going on for ages. All right. This is not new. So
the other thing that's not new, when we're talking about a big part of the show, we were talking about how Arthur Smith did in his interview with Jeff Schultz. Every single interview or public response from a college football coach is done within the prism of how can this benefit me? How can this benefit my program? You asked Jim Harbaugh how he feels about satellite campuses. That was a big thing a few years ago. He loved it because it got him and Michigan outside of his state in the north down to small southern places where a lot of the kids are playing football. Dabo Sweeney thought it was awful. It was the worst thing ever because it was to no benefit for him. And Nick Saban, it might be the worst of everybody. Is every response he gives is within, the parameters of, well, I'm not going to support this, and it's awful for college football because it doesn't help me.
Right. Exactly. You nailed it. You nailed it, Dave. That's exactly it.
Nick Saban's already.
It's just amazing that Nick Saban came out and he's the one who actually started up all of this.
Yeah, singling out Deion Sanders and Jimbo Fisher. Well, I don't know if he mentioned Fisher by name, but he said Texas A&M, mentioned Jackson State. So it's one thing for him to complain about NIL, but to name people was pretty shocking. And then Jimbo Fisher's response was even more shocking with I think the best tweet, I forget who tweeted it, but maybe the best tweet of the week that I saw, Jimbo Fisher calling a press conference to call somebody else a narcissist was just the irony of that was basically what the tweet was emphasizing, and just fantastic tweet, fantastic point about that.
Right.
As well.
Oh God. Yeah. It's, oh God. I don't know what to say about it anymore. As I say, it's ridiculous to even open your mouth up about money in college football because Nick Saban's it. Well, I mean, I don't even know what I'm trying to say anymore because,
I'm laughing at Larry.
It's always about the underground money.
Saban and Sanders make commercials together. Maybe that's how Nick knew that Sanders was offering players money. I don't know.
I don't know.
But I think
why shouldn't he had a small school? Why shouldn't Sanders play the same game that these guys are playing?
Right.
If he's got the resources. And as I say, these big college football, they're empires. They're huge. And you're at the head of your empire. That's why I'm surprised at college coaches that always leave their programs, go to the pros. You find out very quickly that you are not the king of the castle when you go into pro football, when you go to the NFL. Nick Saban is the king of Alabama. That's the way it is. Then it's funny to hear him coming out and saying, this is bad for me. This hurts me. This is
he doesn't say it that way, though. He says it's bad for college football.
He says it's bad for college football. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. But it's really,
as you pointed out, we know what that means.
Right. Yeah.
Nick Saban saying something is bad for college football. Excuse me, Nick. You've been on top of college football for years.
Decades.
Yeah, decades. Yeah. You don't know what is good and bad for college football. I'm sorry. You're happy. You're happy to be the king of Alabama, and you will be the king of Alabama until you retire. And that's why it was funny to kind of see him come out with all this talk this past week. I couldn't believe it. I was looking at it. I'm like, what the hell are they talking about?
Yeah. Yeah.
Money is getting around a different way today than it did in the past. It's still there.
Right.
It was still there.
Yeah. I mean, in the past, you weren't. I guess there are still some rules, right, about paying players. You can't just flat out pay them
Right.
as a college, I don't think. But what's allowed now is the name, image, and likeness, and I
Yes.
guess I'm not an expert in this area, but there are deals that schools have with certain companies, right? And then these companies will hire these players for name, image, and likeness. Basically, it's a way the school can get you money, and you could make your pick of school based on that.
And don't think that Nick Saban can't play that game.
Right. Yeah.
He can play that game as well as anybody in college.
Right. Right.
That's why I say is why it was so ridiculous to hear it coming from him.
My opinion on the NIL is still kind of developing. I don't 100% understand all of it, and the ramifications really is probably what I don't understand. I think in the heart of it is to get young men that make colleges billions of dollars paid some of that money. And I think that
they have been taking advantage of these kids for a long time.
Right. Right. So I think the heart of the NIL is a good thing.
Yeah.
And everyone's scared about the ramifications, this and that, blah, blah, blah. And maybe some of that is true. We'll see as this continues to develop.
That's how they built these empires, is taking advantage of these kids. We give these kids a free education.
Right.
That's how they always got around it before.
Yeah.
But they have been they take terrible, these kids are finally getting some money for things that their programs have been getting money for years. It's finally getting down to some of these kids. And I think anything that gets money to these college players can't be all bad. It might not be the greatest system out there, but it's about time they started seeing some of this money that they generate for these schools.
And I agree. That's why I would really pause and need a full explanation from somebody who says the NIL is bad for college football.
Right.
Because, I think you said it perfectly. Maybe it's not the perfect system. Maybe it still needs to be massaged and changed a little bit over the coming years, but it's a step in the right direction.
The colleges are not happy because that money's not going to them anymore. Right. That's all it gets down to. Money's not going to them. They were making all the money off the name, image, likeness.
Yeah. Right.
And promoting their school, promoting their programs, using that very same criteria that now, they have a problem with the players actually benefiting from.
We're going to end with a comment from Mad Mike today. It's gross to see Nick Saban, Jimbo Fisher arguing against sharing the wealth with kids who put their bodies on the line.
Exactly, Mad Mike. You nailed it. That's it.
Moral of the story, Alabama and Texas A&M play on October 8th, and you don't want to miss it.
You got it. That should be a fun one.
Thanks for tuning in today, everybody. We'll be back next Saturday, Memorial Day weekend. We hope you can make us a part of that Saturday holiday weekend. Yep. Today's show brought to you by Prize Picks. Download the app in your app store. Use that promo code ASU. That supports us. That gets you a 100% match on your first deposit up to $100. Other ways you can support us, follow us on Facebook. Give us a like there. Subscribe to the channel on YouTube, Atlanta Sports Unlimited, and reach out to us. Follow us on Twitter at TJ Pollen, at DM Holcomb.
Yep. As I say, we love interacting with fans on Twitter. The NFL discussion doesn't end when we go off the air on Saturday morning. So join us. Join us on Twitter. Join us on Atlanta Sports Unlimited. It's fun to have these conversations. It's fun to have the interaction. We do really welcome everybody who watches every week. So have a great week, everyone.